Hi everyone, and welcome back to Age Gap Love Story. We are Carrie and Alan, and we are a married couple who has a 32-and-a-half-year age difference. We're coming up on our anniversary, our 22nd wedding anniversary. But today we're going to be talking about age gap, family approval, and disapproval, I guess you could say. And this was a topic that we had been asked about quite frequently. I think it's probably one of the top 3 topics in the age gap community, something that most of us have to deal with. And so we thought we'd share some of our experiences and our thoughts about that. I want to apologize. We bought some new mics. I bought some new mics and they did not charge correctly. So we're using our old crappy mics. So I'm sorry about the audio.
Hello, old crappy Mike.
Yeah. But just know that better audio is coming and we're doing our best. And we seem like we've gotten a little bit of a better routine now with this podcast and video and whatever. And we're trying to record or put out a video every other week. And then I post kind of a lot, and not that much. I post maybe once a week on Instagram, and that's a good place if you want to see kind of outtakes and usually silly photos of Alan or silly videos of Alan. And that's also where I put out the call for questions. And then if you want to interact with us more like one-on-one or other age gap couples, then join our private Facebook group. And we are up to 700 people in that group now. And I'm so proud of that group. In general, I'm not a huge fan of social media, but that group is so special. I just adore it.
They're very nice, and they share a lot of their experiences with us and their background. And it's very helpful for us to know that so we can provide good information in this way.
Yeah, and know what you're dealing with. It's really interesting just because we've been together so long, and so sometimes it's hard to remember what we went through. As I mentioned, we've been married almost 22 years. Yeah, 22 years, but we've been together for almost 27 years. So that's a long time. And sometimes it is a stretch to think about all the emotions and stuff that we went through to get to this point.
That's all behind us now.
Right.
Fortunately. And that's why we want to share some of the ways we overcame different issues with you to help you deal with them.
And help you get to this point. So as I mentioned, the family issues was the topic that was most requested. So that's what I thought we'd talk about today. Some kind of strategies, I guess, when you're going through it. And then what happens if the approval never comes? Can you get past that? And then we're going to answer, I think we have about 4 specific questions that we were asked on this topic. So let's start off by talking about just looking at it from the family's perspective. So even if you think about it, if you put yourself in the position of, say, one day or now, you are a parent and your adult child comes to you and tells you that they met somebody, they fell in love, and that person is 25 years older. How would you react? Obviously, it's in any situation that's kind of out of the norm, it's going to bring up concerns. And so I think that is a normal reaction. And then, but why? Like, why are people concerned? Maybe they think that the older person has bad intentions. They would just want to use you. Or they might be concerned about the different life stages issue. And then I just think there's other like culture. I don't know if cultural assumptions is the right word, but it's just kind of like an assumption about how someone's life should go, who they should marry or partner up with.
Actually, I think that when you consider that the parent is interested in the well-being of the younger person.
Of their child.
Yes, of their child. It's completely understandable. And I think Carrie's point is a good one, is that you need to talk with them and find out specifically what their concerns are and are they rational. And some of them very well may be. I know in Carrie's case, her mother said something like, well, wait to see if he offers you a ring, which I did after a period of time. So the parent may be concerned that a solid relationship is not going to be an outcome of your relationship. Others might be, as again Carrie pointed out, health issues. Do you want to be saddled with the health issues of an older person? And there are ways to, our cat is not happy about our conversation here, but there are ways to discuss that. For example, a lot of younger people have health issues and demand a great deal of care. So although I guess it's more likely that an older person would have health issues, things like that can be discussed and they can be addressed. If the older person has health insurance, they have a substantial asset base. They're very healthy. They maintain their health through diet and exercise. I mean, that's just one example. So once you find out what the objections are, then you can address them.
Yeah, but I would challenge that because I don't know that in every situation, asking them, what are your concerns? And then you give them a good explanation, that you're assuming that then they'll be like, okay, that makes sense.
Right. Well, that's an important point because in these issues, emotions overrule intelligence. In fact, I think in every aspect of life that's true, whether it's politics, religion, whatever it may be, emotions will overrule intelligence or logic. So,
Well, that's when I am a big advocate for setting boundaries. And I think the point is, if you tell your family, and that's a whole different subject in and of itself. We actually do have a video I looked, and it's early on in our video catalog. It's maybe video 3, maybe, and it's about telling your how we told our family. And I think we even did some kind of role playing in that video. So that's a whole different subject of the actual event or day or instance when you tell your family about your new romance. So that is a whole different like set of preparation. And then what comes next, I guess, is what we're kind of talking about now, is the repercussions of when you tell your family, and assuming that most family members aren't going to be approving. Although I have to say, there were people in my family who never said one word. And it was almost like I wanted to say, you do know he's quite a bit older, right? Like, for instance, my grandma, who's not with us anymore, but she just never, it's like she just loved Alan right from the start.
well, compared to your grandmother, I was a kid.
But it was almost that, I guess she was probably in her 80s at the, or maybe 80s at the time, or
Yeah, I was
maybe
in
in her
my
70s.
in the mid,
But it was almost as if she didn't even notice, which I just love that about her.
but that was true of your uncles and your aunts and your cousins.
I have a feeling that they noticed, but it was
Well,
almost like my grandma, it's like it wasn't even an issue. So I guess you're just going to have to take that on a case by case basis. But the point is, you need to be prepared.
yes, you have to make up your mind ahead of time. If there is going to be a battle, is your new relationship or old relationship worth it? And if it is, you have to be prepared for the worst possible outcome, which may be disassociation with one or more family members.
Right. But you're getting ahead, because I think right now we're talking about somebody, okay, like the initial, you've told them and you're getting pushback. So here are some tips. So I would say that when you talk with family, like if you're going to have a conversation about it, so you haven't come to the point where you're like, we're not discussing this, I'm an adult, leave me alone. Now you're at the point of like, I want to try to preserve this relationship with my family. I also want to have them accept my older or younger partner. So you need to be prepared emotionally, and that you yourself are going to have some empathy towards what your family might be feeling, and understand that it's probably out of love and concern for you. And also, I think it's helpful if you have like an expectation, not that they're going to be like, you're right, he's amazing or she's amazing, I'm 100% behind you. But if you have an expectation of simply that you want to maintain your family relationship. So, whatever it is for you, whatever that expectation is for you, or that you just want to get through that family event without having a huge blow up. Okay, so the tip is you're approaching the conversation with empathy, and you're having an expectation that you're just going to get through the day or whatever, lunch or whatever you're doing. I think that's a reasonable kind of expectation to have. I think another one that comes next is you're going to set some boundaries. And like what you're willing to discuss and not discuss. Because when you're an adult, you're allowed to set boundaries like that. And this really segues into one question I want to address right now, because I've been thinking about it. And I think I came up with a good answer in the middle of the night, actually, last night.
Ooh.
So somebody said, somebody asked us on Instagram, they said, how do you respond to a stupid person? Like if they said, well, he's going to be, when you're 50, he's going to be 80, or what are you going to do when you're 80 and he's a whatever, like that kind of weird kind of comment, or what are you going to, so you're going to be 40 and he's 70? What? That kind of thing. I think a great answer that I came up with, I hope it still sounds great. It sounded great in my mind, is that you say, well, I'll let you know when we get there and if I have any questions.
That's good. Or you could just say, I'm going to lock him in the closet and take a cruise.
But I like my answer.
I like
I
your
say,
answer,
like,
yeah.
I'll let you know when we get there,
Yeah.
or, you know, when that time comes, I'll be sure to ask you.
People love to tell other people how to live their lives. And it's always like, do what I say, don't do what I do. But in this process of discussing it with family or friends or whomever and getting pushback, I just want to make two observations. One is, again, a life lesson. I have lots of life lessons. Is that almost everything in life is a cost to benefit analysis. Imagine there's a scale in front of you. What is the cost to do this? What is the benefit to do this? Which one is greater? And if having a breakup or an argument with a family member or a friend is not as important to you as your relationship, then go with a relationship. Again, that's a decision only you can make. And then the second observation I want to make is that when I got older, and I'm sure this is true of every family, my parents continued to tell me what to do. And at the time, my older brother, I was talking to him about it. He said, look, this is the way I handle it. He said, agree. Yes, you're right. Okay. Don't argue with him. Don't tell him you're going to do something different and why. He said, just agree. Because he said, they're not going to be involved in everyday aspect of your life, every minute by minute activity. So do what you want to do, and they'll be happy because they think that you agree with them, and you'll be happy because you'll be doing what you want to do. So that's a possible outcome, unless you're living with your family or you see them daily, or you want to bring your new partner to a family event. But that can happen later on down the road. So I'm just saying.
Yeah, but these are things that people are dealing with.
I understand.
But I guess this, like, you're talking about kind of setting a boundary of like, okay, mom, dad, or whomever, like you can think what you want and I'm going to just live my life. Like that's a boundary that you set for yourself.
Say that's really good advice and I'm going to give it a lot of thought. And then do what you want to do.
Okay, but I think we're also talking about assuming that like the age gap relationship is happening. And so we're trying to get the family to accept it or whatever. But so I think another tip that I have is that you and your partner, your age gap partner, you kind of need to also go into these family things. Like if you're going to go to a family event or a dinner or something, you need to discuss it ahead of time. So for instance, you could tell your boyfriend, let's say that's the situation, like you could say, you know, my dad, when he drinks a lot, he starts to get really argumentative. It's best if you just don't engage, you know, so you kind of have like a game plan before you go into it. I think that can be helpful. And then I do think when you do have family events, and I kind of learned this the hard way, like I hid Alan from my family for about 3 years. In fact, I think you misremembered. You had already proposed to me when I told my mom about us. So, and then she was like, he's never going to want to settle down. And I was like, well, yes, he did. Yes, he does. So if you can start to do that maybe earlier than I did, I don't know. I guess it kind of depends.
I think in any unusual circumstance, initially there's a shock. And as time goes by, the shock diminishes. So going back to my point about agreeing with your parents, you'll consider what they have to say, or friends or family. And then as time goes by, you can introduce your partner, their attitude may soften. Initially, again, things are, if it's news, it's going to be very abrasive and unusual and out of the ordinary. And as time goes by, it kind of softens. That's just my point.
Well, that's my last tip, is that you just might have to give people some time and space to process it and accept it. It just, a lot of times, it just takes time.
It's a shock. I mean, when you stop and think about it.
Well, it's like it throws all their expectations. Like, there's just an expectation in our society that you're going to meet somebody your age, you're going to date, you're going to get married, you're going to do this, you're going to do that.
You're going to have children.
And so this, yeah, and a lot of, I think now that expectation is changing a lot, and a lot more couples aren't having children. And so they're having to deal with having their parents asking them, when are you going to have kids? So anyway, so then I think the next kind of thing that I just wanted to talk about in this discussion is that what happens if the acceptance doesn't come? I mean, that it's years and you're married and you're still getting pushed back. So I think in that situation, that is also a time when boundaries really come into play. And then you're deciding, like, do you want to keep getting hassled or harassed by these people? And then you have to make a decision about, who you spend time with and all that. And that's a boundary thing. And then also, I just want to remind you that, family is kind of a loose term. Like, you can build your own family with people who support you and love you and that you trust, that isn't your blood relatives, that aren't your blood relatives. So you can build your own family. And I just want to give you permission to do that. And community, you can find community outside your blood relation family, because we all deserve to have support and camaraderie and community. Like, we all want that. We're human beings and we all deserve that. And you don't need to put up with people just giving you a hard time all the time, especially when your intentions are just to love your partner and you're not trying to hurt somebody. You're trying to just live your life. That is a good intention, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I also wanted to say something else just to give you a little moral support, and that is, if your family is giving you a really hard time, that does not have to reflect on the future of your relationship. I mean, if I look back and look at the lack of support that I received versus the strength of my relationship with Alan, it doesn't match. So just because you're getting pushback from whomever, it doesn't mean that your relationship isn't real or amazing or, doesn't have a future, because ours did and does.
Yeah, just because somebody else doesn't like it doesn't mean you have not to like it.
Right. And that's your decision as an adult. Yeah. Like, you have to make that decision. I know in some cultures and some families, families first, that's everything. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to make that decision that you are going to put your family first. But that's, that is your decision.
Now, there's a lyric in an old song: you can't please everybody, so you might as well please yourself.
So why don't we answer a few other questions? Somebody asked us, did it take a while for each of your families to accept your relationship? I think we kind of answered this.
Family. I
realized I misread this person's question about how do you respond to the stupid person. So what they were saying was, they were saying that you were 32 years old, 32 and a half years old when I was born.
That's a fair statement.
But
accurate,
so
actually.
That's a good response.
Yeah.
I mean, that if somebody says something like that, it's just that's out of snarkiness, and it's not a nice thing to say. Why would you ever say that to somebody? So I would not, or you could respond exactly like he did. You're really good at math. You don't engage with any kind of comment like that.
It's stupid.
Yeah, that is, or it's rude is what it is.
Well, when other people comment on your life and they're not in your life, it's like arguing with a piece of furniture.
Well, or if anybody comments on your life, period, whether they're your family member or just some troll on the internet, they're being mean, and it really says more about them than it says anything about you. That's what I always try to keep in mind, because you can imagine we get some pretty nasty things that trolls say on the internet. And as much as I try to use the filters and block people and stuff, something always slips through. And it does hurt. I mean, it always hurts when somebody says something really nasty.
You know, if it's family, you can always say, well, let me think about some of the issues in your life that I'd like to comment on.
Well, and then the last question was, actually, there's two questions. Somebody asked about blending families, like that's kind of interesting, like activities or projects for families. I don't know. I guess I'm thinking about like Thanksgiving or a family reunion.
Or if the younger partner has young children, or the older
Yeah.
partner has children and grandchildren, and getting them together at an event.
I'm not sure. I mean, I guess, like, for instance, when I met Alan's first grandson, who was, I think, 2, like, we went to a museum. And so there was an activity where it was capturing our attention. So it wasn't just like sitting around a table staring at each other. So I think, I don't know as far as icebreakers, but I would say just doing an activity, something fun that your family likes to do, like going somewhere, going to an event.
Rather than sitting at a table and looking at each other face to face for 2 hours. That's kind of a stressful situation.
Or even going for a walk, I think can be good, because then you're looking at plants and you're doing something active, or going for a hike, something like that.
Talking to the squirrels.
And then somebody said, how to manage your family and how they treat your partner, and then what happens when your family comes to visit and stays at your house. I think this person, she said living overseas, and how to manage when your family stays at your house. Okay, first of all, you do not have to host your family at your house. You can set your family up at a hotel, or they can stay at a hotel.
There's a question of finances here. Maybe they don't have the money to do that. That would be the best choice, to have them at a nearby hotel.
Yeah, I still think you're allowed to set boundaries with your own home. You don't have to host people at your home.
You don't have
If they can't afford to stay at a hotel, then they can't. If they can travel overseas, then they can stay at a hotel. If they can't afford to stay at a hotel, then they can stay home.
That's a good point.
I feel really strongly about that.
Very tough.
Yeah, well, that's a boundary.
A boundary, okay.
If you are uncomfortable, I mean, if a family is not getting along, that's not healthy to have everybody staying in the same house.
Yeah, like cats and dogs.
Yeah.
Woof.
So I think that's setting a boundary. They're setting expectations. Okay, you stay at a hotel, we'll do this event together, we'll go out for this meal. Like, just setting expectations, setting boundaries, doing what's best for you and your partner, and like your own mental health. Nobody else is going to protect you like you're going to protect yourself, and nobody else knows your own particular needs. Like, I obviously have a particular need for, like, my home is my sanctuary, and so I'm not going to even friends, we usually don't have stay at our house, because we need a lot of I need a lot of downtime. We have like our routine that we like to protect, and that's just how we feel best. And then when we go out, if somebody's visiting, we spend the whole day together, and we have the energy to, make it fun and be engaging and do all the things, but then we need our downtime and our routine at home.
I'm lucky that Carrie lets me live here.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, I think that's it for today. And
our time is up already.
Yeah, and we want to hear more from other questions you have. We did get a question about finances, so I think that's something that we should talk about. In fact, some people asked about that, like other questions outside of the topic.
Tune in next time to get all the answers.
So maybe we'll deal with that next time. But if you have specific questions, because I think it helps if they're very specific without, revealing, we won't say names and stuff, but just be specific, so then we can help you as much as we can.
Right.
So
that's our goal. This is all about you.
Yeah, this is about helping you and helping other age gap couples, thrive and be happy.
Yes.
Okay. See you next time.
Be happy. Bye.